Okay, so it's 1 p.m. in London, 2 p.m. in Belgrade, from where Eva is joining us. And we will start on the spot, hoping that people will be joining in as we have a conversation, because we have an hour and we have a lot to talk about. My name is Dubravka Sekulic. I'm a program lead for MA City Design, and it is my pleasure to host and kick off this year's City Design and Conversation series. This year we are focusing on a topic of minor planning, which is not something that necessarily exists as a term. It's something that we in the City Design try to articulate as our approach. And we see it in a tension with master planning. And in this series of conversation, there will be 6 between now and February, all of them online, all of them happening at what in London is a lunch hour, what in some context is a morning coffee, or your afternoon commute, or it's cooking dinner, if you're kind of zooming in live as we have a conversation. We are seeing kind of minor planning as a tension in relation to master planning, not necessarily as an opposition. But we will be talking with people whose practice inspires our thinking. You can join the future, register and join the future conversations by the link I'm posting in the chat. And also the recordings of the previous year's series, which was focused on themes and work and topics of people working in the city design. So I have been waiting to do this. So this whole kind of series is also here to kind of help us think through the main topics and lines of work that we develop in the program called City Design at the Royal College of Art, where we are really interested in understanding what are the different ways to practice urban design, urban planning, policy, and ways in which we shape city and we design support systems for collective life. And as I say, this comes as understanding how the system works and also understanding that it needs to change with the increasing pressure felt on built environment by the compound crisis of social and climate crisis. This is really one of the most important spaces to intervene. And for me, it's really kind of incredible that we are starting this series with the conversation with Eva Čukić and about what she has been developing together with people who are part of Ministry of Space, Ministarstvo prostora, collective in Belgrade for more than 10 years now, or 15 years actually. Now, and I often think that Eva and I are roughly the same age, but I'm a couple of years older, and we studied at the same Faculty of Architecture in Belgrade. And I always thought that if I just didn't move a year before this started, then my kind of future might have been completely different. Because I think that if I was still living in Belgrade when they were starting it, I might be there with her fighting the fight on the ground. But we take our kind of ways in which we work and we kind of learn from each other. And this is something that we are discussing often as minor planning. We try to connect each other, the really important processes that happen in the city and across the world in a federated way. So not trying to upscale one's practice, but actually kind of connect and create relational practice. So it is easy to see Eva's work in Ministarstvo prostora as a logical when she presents, and one wonders how these things do not exist everywhere. But there is also danger to think that these approaches and institutions from below emerge overnight and take always the same form. So being able to understand the processes that shape the built environment, both physically and institutionally, historically, and with that also contingent to specific space, but also then specific initiatives and groups and openings, which are both fragile and strong at the same time, is one of the key aspects if we think of city design as a way to support emancipation from below and local power. This is especially pertinent when we think about the what gentrification is, and that gentrification is happening in some form or another across the world, and not always it's about latte and flat white. But it takes different form. And one way, and then the gentrification, cycles of demolition and construction, increasing privatization, and which all drive increasing displacement of people and communities. And what they do is they break this intergenerational transmission of memory and processes, and then understanding processes, both as processes that enable certain communities to hold on to their space and thrive, but more often the processes that erased certain communities. So I would like us, Eva, to start at the beginning. How did Ministerstvo Prostora came about, and also how did you become this type of spatial practitioner, both with this kind of radical commitment to public knowledge and being in service to the public, knowing also that you and I both also share this kind of formation as a really classical architects, in which urbanism and thinking about urban issues was always thought as considered as lower order of topics.
First of all, thank you, Dorota, for inviting me, and thank you for the opportunity to share more about our work. I have to say, you mentioned how your future would look like if you didn't left in that moment Velvet, but I have to admit that also my future would look like completely different if I hadn't chance to meet you and to learn from you and some, I have to say, few women from architectural practice who understood that it can be different from the way how it was presented at school in more traditional sense, especially very individualistic and very male oriented, let's say. So you was really kind of, for me, was like, oh my God, there are different ways of doing things, and we can also kind of get a bit crazy in the way how we understand the space and working with people and talk about it and like do the practice, which is not something that is very, very conventional. So my beginning was I started in the architectural office, like everything by the book, with the idea that I'm like next architect star, since that's also what you're being taught at the faculty. But then reality completely opposes that. So the experiences were something that I wasn't expected. Also, there was a lot of injustice, and the whole practice were oriented more towards the rich, towards the 1%, like building the things that are not the common need of the people, including myself. So I was lucky enough to have friends who were also coming from different backgrounds, but also very interested in how the city can be developed and what can be done and how we can use our knowledge to provide things that can be actually more useful, more of a usage to a wider community. So I can start. I would like to share some slides with you just to have an impression how the things that we were developing at the beginning look like. In generally, there will be a brief explanation of the pathway of Ministerstvo Prostora in the last 15 years. Next year, we will celebrate 15. So the beginnings were mostly like oriented towards occupation and squatting of neglected property, but with the clear message that the privatization that we are experiencing is not only economic issue, but something that we need to look from social and political lens. And I will explain how it went through the steps. So our work, as I mentioned, is to advance inclusive and just urban development through community mobilization, research, public awareness, and education, mostly. And we work a lot with local communities because we see these communities as a key counterweight to authoritarian power and speculative capital, which is something that in the part of the world we are coming from is actually our reality for many years. But I see that is happening to other countries as well. So there is a lot of lessons learned that can be transferred to other contexts as well. Our work also kind of frames within the theory of and perspectives of spatial justice and urban commons mostly. And I would also like to highlight looking at things from the feminist perspective. So be aware of our privileges when we do things. And that's how the work of Ministry of Space is basically framed. One of the first things was addressing the issue that there is a lot of neglected property, and at the same time a lot of need to use this space. Unfortunately, back then and still now, so 15 years later, Serbia or any other administrative level has no register of public property. And that's done by purpose. So there is no publicly available documentation what belongs to the city, state, or district. And there were many laws and iterations of different regulations saying that it's a must because of the transparent governance model, etc. But it was never done. And on the other hand, like trying to advocate for property to be given to communities and like turn into something that's valuable for the community was impossible without doing like a basic research on what is there. So one of the first things was this, we call it a map of action, like mapping what collectives are out there on the entire in the entire country who are trying to find a space for their activities and how they contribute to the quality of life of citizens and wider communities. So we managed to map more than 100 of these initiatives and to present it in the book saying, okay, you have to find a way to change the regulation and then it was like, okay, but no, we don't have the list of property, we don't know, etc., etc. So we created this map, which is called Spacebook. It was a map, like an open source map, where anyone could add what kind of property they see in their neighborhood. Is it in which stage it is? Is it like the industrial complex? Is it small, big, whatever kind of architecture? And on the other hand, you can also add your needs here in potrebe, and then it overlaps with the available spaces in your surroundings. We also add here, for example, resources. Those were all the analysis of the legal frameworks, how to advocate, how to negotiate different types of temporary use, whatever is needed for you to kind of push for your idea. Since we are kind of all of us back then were this iteration of Ministry of Space is not much better. Like IT idiots, this open source platform didn't work for long because in one moment people of course started putting like porn materials on it, so we had to kind of cancel it. But that was a try at least to do something which shows the amount of property that can be used differently. And that was also the moment when we decided, okay, let's make real examples in real life and let's bring people together to show how things can be done without any kind of support.
This is amazing. And I think what is this kind of thing of like, of course, if you're arguing for a more public kind of different use of the redistribution, especially of public space, publicly owned space and a resource, you then also immediately have to start to think about digital kind of platforms. So the kind of the opening and the curse of open source platforms, it's either too open so then people post whatever, or the project is so unstable that it kind of disappears. kind of halfway through you're doing your project. So it's kind of, but I think what is really kind of amazing here already is this kind of very beginning is that kind of that from the very beginning that you started to work, you understood that it's about kind of multimodal work that is about recognizing the spatial potential, recognizing that then there are communities, artists, various different citizen and civic groups who actually have some spatial needs which are not being met. That there are all these spaces which are public property, which is also connected to the history of property of kind of transition from Yugoslavia into Serbia, which we don't need to go into. And that most of it cities are actually seeing this property as a future source of capital and not as a resource that needs to be there to support everyday life and initiatives of their citizens, especially beyond bare minimum of jobs or like supporting most obvious work and sleeping. And then that it's also about raising awareness of people that their needs can be met differently, raising also that these are also issues around regulation, legal frameworks, and not just benevolence, waiting for a good government to kind of give. So that it's really about kind of multimodal from the beginning, and that you have been actually for 15 years developing these approaches, which are insisting immediately on that intervention is also intervening into public discourse and knowledge people have. And what I think was super important from the beginning is that this, while like your initial gut interventions were informed by seeing the rapid privatization and dispossession, I think that's our generation kind of have the memory of remembering space was used differently. And then all of a sudden we were pushed out of the spaces. That you also immediately decentered Belgrade as the because that's kind of a big curse in not just in Serbia but also around. If you're working from London, we tend not to see really important things happening just around our doorsteps in the smaller spaces in the same time. And this question around scale, and which was not kind of the question of transcalarity was really, which is something we think a lot in the city design and minor planning. And I really like match your needs with the space, like which really was this question of creating nurturing relationships between communities and organizations who are by default by the pressure of actually scarce spatial resources, and also scarce resources if you're the only way to access space to do your activities is to pay commercial rent, you're pitted against each other, and not actually your small art institutions are asked by the system to see themselves as competitors and not as potential collaborators. And I think that you immediately entered into the space by thinking about how do we work together and not against each other. So there is also a question of trust there, which I think that is really important, and insisting that we need to claim back spaces for collective presence on whatever people are doing, and that's precise, and doing things new, and that this is precisely when new types of society emerges. So a lot of your kind of focus kind of went into that direction, and also especially by thinking what are the needs of the new forms of culture that exist.
Yeah, and back then it was also the kind of working with the cultural sector was I want to say most easier, but there are elements of this particular sector that are kind of supporting these initiatives. You know, there is creativity, there is creative freedom. There was also the cultural sector was the most progressive one in terms of like nurturing progressive values. And not only in Serbia, but you also know the situation in Croatia. So all the progressive ideas basically came from this field, and that's why we were thinking, okay, we need support. We have like zero money for whatever we think of. So let's see how we can juggle and what we can do to create spaces to show that these things are possible and needed. So one of the first initiatives was street gallery project. It's the narrow street in the city center, like literally next to the National Assembly, which was used as a public toilet, basically, especially when there are celebrations such as basketball players winning the World Cup and then celebrating it on the streets. This was the place to pee. And also, like it was used as an illegal parking, claimed by the guy who just came there and decided to charge 100 euros to people who live there monthly, you know, and no one questioned that. And that's our reality, basically, you know, it's just like out of nowhere, some cowboy comes and said, now you pay me, and people are paying. So we came there. It was basically, we felt like a space invaders at the beginning. Like, okay, let's show that this space can be used differently. These windows here that you can see, they belong to the former cinema Kozara, which was closed in 2007 with other 14 cinemas in the city because of the privatization, of course, illegal privatization. So this space remained neglected even though it's in the city center. So we negotiated 2 years with the municipality of Stari Grad, Old City, who was managing the space back then. And it was very difficult to convince them to give us this space for temporary use, just to show what it can be done. There was a huge level of mistrust. They were non-stop thinking that we are either some kind of youth branch of some political party, and it's the way to promote and kind of engage with the youth, or that we want to do some commercial activities, but they are not aware which. So it was really exhausting period, and we managed after after 2 years, and after basically lying them that there are examples like this in Zagreb. So they was like, okay, if there is in Zagreb, there will be in Belgrade as well. And that's also the way how things operate in Balkans. You have to be better than your neighbors, even though that's not true. But we exist thanks to each other. And then on the right, you can see the picture from October this year. So this is how it's actually frequently used by different groups. Concretely, the Skaters Festival. But what we wanted to achieve with this space, we wanted to show that the space can be used, the public space can be used differently. We also wanted to show, that was in 2011, that we can use public space to address the topics that we find important to be discussed in the public space. So the majority of exhibitions were politically or socially engaged. And we also use this space to promote people who were working in the DIY collectives. So kind of to give the space for all these different things that exist in our ecosystem. One of the important issues was, okay, it has to, and it's still like that, every 3 weeks or 2 weeks on Fridays at 8, there is an opening. No matter what kind of weather conditions are out there, we have an opening. So as you can see, this picture actually shows quite well the winter in the street gallery. So we make some warm rakia and still have fun. We did have hundreds of different events, both like exhibitions, but also like off events such as workshops, concerts, choirs, movie projections, etc. And in December 2020, we also decided to hand over this space to a local collective called Matriarchy. That's the collective that works a lot of in the field of independent comics. And we worked with them years before. So there was a moment when we just thought, okay, we spent 10 years in this space. It's enough. We give our best to it. And now it's not fair if we just take things for granted and not appreciate anymore what we have. So the space needs new energy, new ideas. So Matriarchy is now running it, and it's really kind of based on the same values, and it's really, really a great way how they do it. We try to show the values that we nurture in different ways. So we managed to and succeeded to change the name of the street and to name it by one of the prominent anti-war figures, Goran Čavajda. He was the drummer of the local Yugoslav band. And it was he was an anti-war figure, and for us it was important to kind of address this as well. So to use every mean that is available to us to kind of speak about the topics that we find important for the society back then in transition. This example inspired around 10, 11 other similar initiatives in Serbia. So from Subotica to Vranje, you will find different models of street gallery working in these towns. And I just I made a picture of my door. This is the door in my flat. And actually why I did it, these are all the messages from the people who were exhibited in the street gallery and slept on my couch. And why it is important? Because it really depicts very well what you can do with like zero money and with huge, like with resources that you have, and how you create a huge social capital. And the budget of the gallery was super humble, like 200 euros per exhibition, without any fee for the artist, but with great energy and appreciation of people being there with us and supporting our initiative. So these are people who slept here are also now great friends and people you can count on when whatever you want to do. Like you can organize a protest in 10 seconds because you have like everything. The entire ecosystem is there. Or the festival, it doesn't have to be the protest. Parallel to it was expedition in Expion. Dubravka is very familiar with it. A former Yugoslav film production company, which was privatized and then remained neglected for many years. And we, in March 2011, decided to enter and kind of turning into a social and cultural center. This building, unlike Street Gallery, this one is located on the suburbs of Belgrade. So it was also challenging to work in the community, which is dealing with completely different problems like youth delinquency, criminal poverty, etc. It was in this case we were using a lot of like Tom Sawyer tactics because I remember when we invited people to come to see Inex and to support us and join, it was Sunday morning, March, and everybody was like wasted from the night before. It was very cold. This vacant building, no electricity, no water, everything is dirty. And then we said, okay, yeah, well, this is a diamond. Let's come next week and start cleaning it. This will be a great space to get together, all of us, and do whatever we want. And like literally no one came. It was like 5 people came, which will later become a Ministry of Space collective. And then together we figure out that we can make these sessions, let's say, of like 1 weekend cleaning actions and then weekends in between party sessions. So in one moment it was kind of lost which weekend is what, and there was a critical mass of those who wanted to join. And the whole reconstruction, if we can call it like that, of the building was done basically by the people who were inhabiting it. At the end, after 6 months, it was a space which hosted several different studios, galleries, kindergarten for kids from the Roma settlement that was next to it. Yeah, I don't know even what the class is for the art school, community garden. It was really a space, and it was back then the only space in the city that operated like that. And after that, we thought to address the problem of privatization of cinemas. which we did for 3 years through different campaigns. And then the final thing was, okay, let's enter to Cinema Zvezda, the one in the city center, that also remained as a guarantee to a former workers that they will receive their share back, because they were all shareholders during the socialist period. And they were actually promised that they will benefit from this privatization, which of course didn't happen. So together with the students from the Faculty of Drama Arts and different cultural workers, we entered the Cinema Zvezda. It was completely different occupation because it was in the city center. It was already a new government, the current one. So the context was entirely different, and it was quite tense in every single sense. There was a huge support coming from everywhere, from like the entire country of Serbia, but also abroad. There was a lot of articles in the prominent newspaper. For example, this animation movie here was made by Michel Gondry for the crowdfunding campaign. Alain Badiou came here several times. Tsipras, the former president of Greece. So it was kind of really, it gained massive European attention as well. And it was immediately kind of clear for all the groups involved that we don't communicate in a good way what we are doing there. We all entered, and I also saw that in the documentary movie that is made about this initiative, and it's called New Cinema Zvezda, which really shows pretty well the problems of collective decision making if things are unspoken. If we enter any kind of endeavor with the assumption that we all share same values and understand the concepts in the same way. Since we didn't do that, we didn't listen to each other carefully, we didn't pay attention on these literally details, we were in the constant fight among each other until it totally destroyed all of us. But I really, I think Zvezda was one of the best lessons learned, and something that later we will practice in Magazine, in the next example, the Cultural and Social Center in Belgrade, where a lot of people from Zvezda were also part, but also Zvezda in Zvezda, there were many left initiatives born there. So new political movements, anti-eviction movements. So there are good things that came out of this, but also a lot of traumas. But I really recommend you to watch that movie because it shows really well this entire process. Magazine is the last space I will show you. It's basically the facility on 3 different addresses, number 4, number 6, and 8. It was given firstly to the independent cultural scene for the Independent Cultural Center, but the number 4 was given, but the contract was never signed. The mayor died in between, so there was the status of Magazine was never regulated. Those who had the permission to use it were threatened by the eviction in 2014, so they invited the big association of independent cultural scene of Serbia, whose members were a Ministry of Space as well, to kind of think about what can be done and how the space can be protected. And after a lot of sessions of brainstorming and inspired by the case of Pogon in Zagreb, the people from Agaci came to idea to open the calendar, or actually to create this very specific model and to open these 2,000 square meters for other people to use it. So it showed that nobody needs space 24/7 and that resources can be shared among people. So this is the platform, the team platform that we are using. And here on the left, you can see the spaces in Magazine, and here you see how they are scheduled. So basically, each of us has a direct link to the calendar we put when we want to use it, for what, and our contact in case that something has to be rescheduled a bit, or there are some questions. And the idea is to return the space, to like clean it and put things back as you find it. After 4 years of using it based on the open calendar in 2018, we decided to create a very specific model based on the informal practices and habits of the people. And there are hundreds of people who are using it. There are like 200 keys or 300 keys distributed around the city. No security, no person who is employed, no cameras now there are on the entrance. But like there was kind of the massive amount of behavior that has to be somehow understood and put into a model so everybody can understand how it functions. So basically, magazine is literally the example by the book of common practices. So the resource that is governed by the community of its users. So the governance model.
Yeah. So yeah, I would like to stop you briefly. Oh, okay, maybe finish. Yeah.
Just to share about the decision making.
Yeah.
So the model is the assembly is governing the space. The assembly is those are the members for regular users. That's how we call them. So those who have the access to the calendar, direct access, and want to be involved in the decision making. And occasional are those who, it's not the matter of frequency of usage, but those who don't want to be involved in decision making process. And that's fine. That's learning number one. People don't, all of us don't want to be involved in this, and that's fine, but we can contribute in different ways. And then we have these operating bodies, which are all rotating functions, and they are monthly mostly or several months, and working groups. So this is basically how the structure is developed, and decisions are made based on this. So we don't have any kind of, the magazine doesn't have any kind of rigid board who decides or curates the program over there. There are strict values, unaccepted behaviors, and program priorities. And all of this is explained in at least 1 or 2 paragraphs. Every member of the community knows the rules. We all went through them together through the process, which lasted 3 months. So every word was like literally super described until we all understood what we talk about and accepted this. And it came into community like we designed these rules together, not top down. So now this is something that we share and we appreciate. And we know clearly what it means, to explain about the program. So the idea of open calendar was to open the space in order to protect it. So when we decide on who will have the priority in the program, if, for example, you come from London and want to organize the event, big event, public event, and I, which am dinosaur of the space, want to have a meeting in the same room for 3 people, you will have priority. You will have priority because the space has to be open and bring as much people as possible. So this is how it's defined as well. You can read on the website, but also in the book that the Ministry of Space published, all the details about this model, which is very complex, but really it works. It works even now when we are like 7 years away from when it was proposed.
No, and I think this is absolutely amazing, and I kind of really love the model of magazine and open calendar model, because it really practically shows that city design is not just about shaping the space, but this is kind of, for me, one of the kind of example what minor planning is in it. You have a spatial space which is underused. Magazine means warehouse in our language, so it's kind of it was owned by the city, underused space. And then you have ways of how you can co-manage, in which you also can constitute institutional framework and design the institutional framework. And what is, in a way, for me, like design is, how do we do things in space over time? And then this kind of brings, and under which decisions and who has the priority. And I think that this kind of whole process is also really amazing, because it actually shows counter that what we think, that kind of groups of people who have competing often interests, because there are days in the week which are better to organize public events, and there are times in the day which are better, that they can actually also come together and use and share the space and find ways not to only compete. And I love the fact that there are so many keys around magazine around Belgrade without security. And so what I think is also important here is that how in which ways this kind of also shifted your thinking, and that it's really about challenging the ideas of governance, and that's actually, like design, where the design is and where it sits. And that challenge is kind of both kind of collective as a process of understanding how things work, but then also propositional, or that it's also important to offer that different imaginary. And I think that kind of magazine is also, as if all other initiatives were also challenging the common sense present in Belgrade at the moment and across ex-Yugoslavia and across the world, basically, that only commercial spaces are viable.
Mm.
But this is also happening in a really complicated context of Serbia.
Absolutely, and it really takes a lot of energy and time and devotion to it. As I mentioned, like in Inex or in Zvezda, the lack of communication and mutual trust was actually the problem, which we couldn't see at the beginning because you don't have any experience. You don't understand why things are not working. You just see that they are not working and everyone is getting super angry, especially at each other. And then the initiative collapse. Learning also about yourself and how to control your ego and how to work collectively and transfer this knowledge and kind of accept different proposals is something that is super important for these initiatives. And that brings the change, but that's learning by doing. Working in the context of Serbia, we did spend a lot of time into doing a very thorough research and advocacy, but it doesn't make sense if you are in the environment which is highly authoritarian, and like all the doors are closed. So we do operate in the context where there is no opportunity to talk, where to have any kind of dialogue, where institutions are captured, where the space is understood as and produced as a spectacle of power, and the power is held by these few who are actually governing the entire system. What we learned in the last 10 years now is that the level of corruption in urban development and in construction is actually massive. It's one of the biggest. So, and that's followed by the deep distrust in the institution and by this like regulation of deregulation, let's call it like that. So making the government, making the opportunities to kind of legalize what actually wouldn't be legal and not legit at the end. But despite all these obstacles and circumstances, there is emergency struggles who are kind of reactive and proactive and are growing. Our trajectory in one moment we were facing one of the biggest and the most controversial projects in Belgrade and in Serbia, Belgrade waterfront development. This is the project on the left. This is the city center of Belgrade. That's the project by the investor from the Abu Dhabi United Arab Emirates, Eagle Hills, turning 100 acres of the city center into luxurious housing and office spaces with the highest tower, biggest shopping mall, etc., etc. And basically, the government gave them for free the city center, and the Republic of Serbia invested a massive amount of money and other infrastructure works and resources for a private investor to profit. And this became actually, this was the experiment at the beginning, which will now become our reality in terms of other projects that are now happening in Belgrade. We can talk about them later, like Expo 2027 or Donald Trump Hotel in the city center, and so on. So there is the same way of how they are manifested, and there is always the question, what are the benefits of it for the Serbian society? What this project triggered was massive protest against it, and the massive protests were led by Don't Let Belgrade Drown initiative, which was the initiative of the collective Ministry of Space. So it took us a while, like 4 years, of research, of massive work on how to understand the processes behind, people involved, law changes, how to translate that into something that has mobilizing power, and so on. And in one moment in 2016, there was a midnight demolition of private property in the area done by actually the city officials were involved into it, the same people who will now be the ministers in the current government. And that sparked these like 25,000 people, bringing 25,000 people to the streets of Belgrade. The dark yellow duck was the symbol of it. And we did use, this important to mention, we did use a lot of humor to kind of mobilize people. For us, that was an important tactic, but also something that keeps us sane as well, mentally. And what happened after these protests is that the core team of the Ministry of Space divided. So half of the team went into politics. So they established the political party in the green left spectrum. And now they are members of the parliament, and half of us stayed in, let's say, this non-profit sector working on politicization of urban planning. So we did manage to create this sense of kind of awareness among people that it's important to be engaged into what is happening in the city. So in the last 7, 8, 9 years, what we do, we uncover controversies in urban planning. We support citizens in shaping their neighborhoods. We work up until now with more than 100 initiatives on the territory of Belgrade. So, but those are not, it's important to highlight that those are not activists. So those are like regular random people who live somewhere and they just want to fight the injustice in their neighborhood. We conduct a lot of research and produce studies in spatial justice, organize community actions and participatory initiatives. And we did advocate for democratic and sustainable urban development, but we put that on pause since the situation now is really not for any kind of advocacy work. And just to share, so in the last few years, what is the general what are the general findings about how people feel the Belgrade is developed? You can see that like half of the population think that it's developed according to the private interest of the powerful, that is territorially unevenly developed. 62% think that they are not involved and informed about the city development. So for us, that was kind of a clear message that people don't know what is happening around them. They react when they see bulldozer on the street. But before that, the entire process of like planning and understanding how you can get into it and change the direction was totally, they were totally unaware of it. And why is that? It's because it's organized in the way that it's very rational, that it's presented as exclusively professional, politically neutral, which is very important. There is a lack of transparency. There is a failure to protect the public interest within these plans. And mostly when there are opportunities to kind of have these public sessions or gatherings with the decision makers, the outcome is a massive conflict. It looks like the beginning of the civil war, literally. And people get usually discredited immediately if they are not professionals. So the city administration and decision makers, they kind of discredit you if you are not educated. You are not educated enough to talk about space, even though as a person who lives somewhere, you actually know the best what are the needs of your community and what are your needs over there and what has to be done. So to kind of illustrate better how participation looks in Serbia, it's literally like the beginning of the Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy. It says at the beginning of this book, you know, but Mr. Dent, you were informed about the plan to destroy your house. It was in a basement of the city administration in the locker protected by the wild animal. And that's how it looks in Belgrade, literally. So this room over here, this is the basement of the city administration where all the plants are exhibited. There is no wild animal to protect it, but you get informed via the website of the city administration to be in the basement during the working hours, during the working days. And if there is, for example, a mass interest to join and participate, they will immediately send police or private security to protect these plants in the basement. So any kind of participation is actually they're trying to cancel it or to kind of make it impossible. That's why our decision was, okay, we need to empower people and we need to educate them to know how to deal with the current situation and to build this power from below.
Yeah. And I think this is super important because in a way, it's a double obfuscation. Like each of us goes through education and learns how mountains are formed, but doesn't learn anything almost about how the built environment is formed. It presents itself as given. And even if you remember there was something, it was like a park and now it became a big kind of shopping mall. After a while, we will forget it was a park. So that kind of really is. And then on the other hand, you have like professionally kind of gatekeeping. And I think that you're kind of understanding that it's really about the war. And so and I think Serbia at the moment is a training ground, one of the training grounds for anti-radical, anti-democratic development and planning. But at the same time, you're also proposing all these kind of really radical democratic approaches. So maybe you can show, because we're also kind of short now, getting short on time, some of the kind of what are the kind of crisis headquarters and like few examples of how do you actually do this challenge to obfuscation.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we established something that we call crisis headquarters, and it's a platform through which you can participate or get more engaged. So we do mobilization of people. We make these public objections, gather them, sending them to the city officials, city administration. We also go on terrain. Since, as I mentioned, the information about the planning processes is super hidden in the closet protected by the wild animal. We are using our social media to announce what are the plans and projects which are taking place in the territory of Belgrade. But we also created this GIS map called Where is the Plan, where you can find all the plans and projects that are currently in the procedure in Belgrade. And here you know which type of the plan it is, in which phase, and then you find all the necessary details about the plan. After it, we usually go to the neighborhoods and we do this kind of education on the ground, like explaining what is in the plan, how the procedure looks like, and how people can get involved. We created a lot of tools, as I mentioned. So we worked with more than 100 initiatives. So it's really, and we were 7 people. So it's that institution. It's impossible to cover all those needs. So we did kind of collected all of our knowledge in these 15 years through different guides. So, for example, this one is the guide to defend the space, where you have all the steps mapped from how to create a Viber group to how to go to constitutional court and write the initiative order, like all the steps very in detail. Then, for example, how to read the plans. Also, like very simple way of reading the plan, so you know what you're looking at that basement. And then also a kind of web platform of how we can help, so how to find a planning document, how to read the plan, how to make the objections and comments, and then a request for us to prepare people for a public session, which is quite a traumatic experience, as I mentioned. So this is how these guides are look like. Everything is very simple over there, but just like for you to recognize what you're seeing there on the official plan and kind of understand what it means. And then we usually redraw the plan by the hand and then explain it in the community directly to the people. What it contributes to was the actually the increased understanding of participation, the rejections of plans and projects that are opposite to the common interest of the local community. And for us, the most wonderful moment when these initiatives become completely independent and proactive, and kind of become influential at the local level. And that is happening when that always happens when you have this experience of collective action and collectiveness in general. So it's like a butterflies in your stomach. So, and I felt it for the first time in Inex film, and that's what I think kept me in this collective so long. And it's something that people experience and that they don't want to give up. So they don't want to forget or lose this feeling, which is super important. We also tested several tools like citizens assemblies or deliberative mini public, which are very complex mechanism to kind of get to the consensus with people who are like randomly selected. And it takes from 8 to 16 hours of deliberation. But it for us was really important because it showed that when people are well informed and educated, they are able to make good discussions with to contribute to good discussions with good arguments and to make decisions that are in the common interest. Because we have months of preparation, sending info materials, working with them, bringing experts who also have this transformative moment of like listening people and understanding what they need, and then the atmosphere in the room changed. And the results of it are actually something that can be incorporated in the planning system, and the plans can be based more on what is the real need of the people. Finally, if you know the political situation in Serbia, there are now informal citizens assemblies, self-organized in every single part of this country, who are very active, and we are invited to work with them on the issues that are related to their needs in their neighborhood, which is kind of a new level of engagement and political awareness happening currently in our country. So this is all from my side.
Yeah. So thank you. There are so many things we can pick up, but we have maybe like 5 minutes left. So I will immediately open it up to the audience. If you have any questions, please kind of type in a chat, or I can also unmute you to ask a question. And as you're like, we are waiting for a question, I think and we have to kind of, at least at the end, I will ask you about the music, which we always finish the kind of this conversation. One thing that is for me really important is that you kind of have this, like, there is like an incredible rigor, but there is also so much joy. And I think that's something that it is really important, because I learn a lot from thinking about what is the proposition of abolition, especially in the ways that Ruth Wilson Gilmore kind of frames it. And I think that like with magazine, with some of these crisis headquarters, like Citizens Assembly, you're not only fighting the fight that is happening now. There is also the way of showing that how the planning, how this everyday life can be organized differently. And that in that way, that kind of embodied the joy, which you say we all felt in the moments when we realized actually it's possible to not to be just passive consumer of either kind of urban processes, and because that participation is kind of consuming urban processes, that there is actually this kind of a joy in which one realizes that life can be more nurturing than it is.
Exactly. That's the most important element. Uh, for me personally, it's really like the most important element. It's to feel joyful while doing these things, to have fun. It's also, it helps, as I already mentioned, like to protect your mental health, in a situation where you are basically surrounded with like really terrifying news, and political situation. And, it also gives the opportunity, to make a safe space for others to join. And people like to be part of these initiatives. So, all complex things can be, explained in a way to be understandable, to use jokes, to kind of use humor, and it has mobilizing power, and it has even bigger mobilizing power than to just like throw a bucket of shit to someone about privatization, criminal, and everything that we are experiencing for 30 years. People are tired of those narratives. But if we make it around the yellow duck or around these kind of cleaning actions or something, it really creates a completely different, sense of engagement.
And I precisely also like this moment of redrawing a plan with a hand. That question, like where actually every single information is still there, but it's the kind of the way that drawing looks is all of a sudden inviting people in and not actually presenting itself as this is not for you. And I think this is something a lot to learn if we are thinking about what is the public knowledge, how do we constitute, how do we take responsibility as kind of experts and professionals in the field, but without alienating others. And I think but it actually shows that in some of these cases, there is this big fear that gatekeeping means that people like kind of we are protecting our power. I think that actually this is being eroded anyway by the way that real estate driven urban planning has been kind of working around the world for the last at least 50, 60 years. So that maybe actually the way to kind of claim kind of power, if power is important, is to actually to radically reframe relationship with the communities with whom we work. Our audience today is a little bit shy, so there are no questions. Okay, there is a question from Maria Topolchanska. Hi, Maria. Such a precise talk and formulations we all need and use. How can radically solidarize across national legal frames beyond academia also? I mean, this is a really important question of like, but I think there's been like a lot of there's been a lot of transfer of knowledge between national frames, between Croatia and Serbia, in last 15, 20 years.
In our context, yes. And it's still in between the Croatian, Serbian, Montenegro. I mean, for example, with these investors from Eagle Fields, the Montenegro and Albania are experiencing the same thing. So there is a lot of knowledge transfer. We inherited the same situation. We have a very similar context with it, and it's important to learn. And to be honest, you cannot transfer the practices like completely, like 100%, and do the same thing in your own. It doesn't work like that. You can adapt them. But there is a lot of learning, and what I appreciated even more was this openness to talk about the failures, which we did a lot with our comrades from Zagreb, but we also, when we introduced our work, we intend to say this went wrong, we made a mistake here, the way how we communicated was too professional, or we had the pre-assumption that people understand, and so on. So because it really changed the way how you make things at the end. But what is important, it's really important to share these examples, because otherwise with no inspiration, you wouldn't feel empowered to react, you would feel completely alone in your world. So in this sense, like seeing other people doing the same, it gives you kind of additional energy. And if there's successful examples, you feel even better. Then you feel completely empowered to kind of take things into your own hands.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you. And unfortunately, I think we have to close it here. Uh, uh, So I will just invite you all. Thank you all for coming. I will invite you to join the following conversations. We continue next week with Olympia Kazi on talking about design for nightlife and policy and city design. We then have Kalbun Basrara from Rivak talking about urban heritage reconstruction as a tool to liberation in Palestine. And then we continue in January with Charlotte Martel-Bart, Adam Greenfield, and David McEwen from Unit 38. But before we close it off, I want to ask you about the music. So at the end of these conversations, I always want to turn to music, and this is also came after and this is started before, and then recently, my understanding of minor planning has realized how much it has been shaped a lot by recognizing that for me, in the cities in which I feel I belong to, which is Niš, Belgrade, and now London, path to belonging was through being in with others, and listening to music at events we call concerts or parties. And by that, this commitment to kind of listening as an urban theory and knowledge. So what music songs kind of inspire you and would like to share that opens up towards this kind of life otherwise in an equitable collectivity?
So we had in the Ministry of Space, we had a format which for us was very important, like internal thing of having karaoke Wednesday morning at 8. So we sing from 8 to 10. And we also invite friends who want to join, like to sing with us. Usually there are like one or two who kind of believe that it's really happening. The others are just like, no way. And the song that we always sing at the end was the Million Godina.
Amazing.
Yes. Yeah, that's
Which
one.
now
So,
also kind of great. Yeah, excellent. So thank you so much for this. And now I know what I will be doing next time I'm in Belgrade on Wednesday between 8 and 10 a.m.
you're all
Thank you.
welcome.
Yeah, everyone, if you're in Belgrade, you know that the best way to start your Wednesday is by karaoke in Ministarstvo Prostora. Thank you, Eva, so much. This has been amazing.
Thank you, Dubi. Thank you.